Niccolo Machiavelli, a name that evokes dread of political evil, often seen as the first embodiment of cruelty and cunning. But in reality, he was not a simple villain. He was a courageous thinker who dared to tear away the hypocritical veil of morality, concealing the true nature of power. He rejected the hollow doctrines of Christianity and the traditional norms that praised benevolence, honesty, and self-sacrifice. Instead, Machiavelli bluntly exposed the truth. The world is not run by the saintly, but by those who know how to manipulate, deceive, and are willing to act ruthlessly when necessary. He constructed a complete, deeply contradictory, yet chillingly profound system of thought. Cruelty is not a sin, but a tool. Evil is not something to fear, but a reality to grasp and employ. The image of a sinister Machiavelli has become the symbol of deceit, but if we move beyond prejudice, we see that he was pointing to a harsh truth. To survive and succeed in a world full of intrigue, one must understand the rules of power rather than rely on empty morality. To truly understand Machiavelli, we must return to the context that shaped him. 15th century Florence, a city radiant with art yet rotten to the core. Politics was manipulated, religion became a tool, and republican ideals were merely a thin coat of paint hiding greed and fear. Niccolo was born in 1469 into a once wealthy family that had fallen into decline. His father, Bernardo, was an educated lawyer but a failure, skeptical of religion and often unemployed. His mother was devout, loved literature, and spent her life composing sacred poetry. This contrast planted two currents in him: cold rationality from his father and sharp expressive ability from his mother. The latter later blended into the pragmatic yet leftly seductive pen of the prince. Florence called itself a republic, but in truth it was a stage for power directed by the Medici family. Every 2 months, 8 priori and a temporary gonfalonier were chosen by lot among the prominent citizens. It sounded democratic, but it was a rigged game. The Medici skillfully manipulated the system, planting their agents and turning the government into a machine serving their private interests. Beneath the appearance of freedom lay disguised tyranny. In this atmosphere of calculation and betrayal, Machiavelli grew up, observed, analyzed, and drew a chilling conclusion. Morality is a luxury in the game of power. Anyone who believes politics can run on good intentions will soon become prey. Europe at that time was a blood-soaked chessboard. Italian lords, mercenaries, foreign powers constantly switching sides, betraying and killing to seize control. Glorious Florence was also swept into the vortex. Amid the chaos, Machiavelli came of age and witnessed the unbridgeable gap between noble ideals and ruthless action. At age 9, he saw the body of a conspirator against the Medici hung upside down in front of the government building. Left to rot for weeks as a terrifying warning, the lesson was seared into him. Failure in politics does not merely mean loss of power, it means loss of life. The combination of gilded corruption and naked violence, the seeds of the pragmatic, cold worldview he would pursue. Though little is documented about his early years, it is clear he possessed a razor-sharp intellect and exceptional learning far beyond his peers, training in the humanities, a passion for ancient Rome, and authors like Livy, Tacitus, and Cicero, men who had questioned power, morality, and the fate of nations. In 1494, the Medici fell, the Republic was restored, and Machiavelli entered public life. Starting as a minor official drafting documents, thanks to his powers of observation, persuasive writing, and strategic thinking, he rose rapidly. At age 28, he became secretary of the Second Chancery, one of Florence's 2 most powerful offices, and secretary to the Ten of War, overseeing diplomacy and military affairs. Remarkably, no noble birth, no military exploits, no backing, only intellect, understanding of people, and flexibility amid shifting political winds. These qualities he later called by a term of immense weight: virtù. People often regard Machiavelli as a failed politician, a man cast aside and condemned by history for his scheming and cruelty. But that is only the surface. For over 10 years he was Florence's leading diplomat, traveling across Europe to negotiate, persuade, and observe the great courts. He met kings of France, popes, and the most feared Italian warlords. His limited successes were not due to lack of talent, but because Florence was small and weak, caught between mighty empires, merely a pawn on the board. In 1512, the Medici returned. The Republic collapsed. Machiavelli was suspected of conspiracy, arrested, brutally tortured with the strappado suspension by ropes that stretched the body, then exiled. In those dark days of despair, when fame and power were stripped away, he wrote Il Principe, The Prince, the book that made his name immortal. Not his only work, but the very soul of his philosophy, a survival manual for rulers, a stark guide to seizing and maintaining power in the real world, not the ideal one. He dedicated it to Lorenzo de' Medici as a desperate plea for pardon and return to public life. But beyond begging, the Prince was a revolutionary declaration. Power is measured by effectiveness, not morality. Before him, political philosophy had praised virtue, justice, and generosity as the standards for leadership. Machiavelli turned it all upside down. If a leader relies solely on morality, he will be devoured by the pragmatic. The world runs on survival instincts, not ideals. From this he opened a new chapter in political thought, the unvarnished truth about power. In The Prince, Machiavelli carried out a total rebellion against traditional political morality. For the ruler, what matters most is not doing right, but maintaining and strengthening power. A good man is not one who follows ethics, but one who builds a great, strong, enduring state. He separated politics from religion and ethics, making it an independent field where survival principles override moral values. The Prince does not teach how to live virtuously. It teaches how to survive among wolves while keeping your head. He understood clearly, honesty, generosity, kindness, though admirable, are not always effective in a world full of betrayal. He did not deny goodness, he merely pointed out that no one can remain moral at all times and still be an effective leader. Sometimes, to protect the country, one must be ready to act cruelly, and that cruelty is a dark but necessary courage. What is bold in Machiavelli, he does not justify, apologize, or sugarcoat. He could have said, power is evil but necessary, to avoid criticism. But instead he inverted morality, coldly exposing how power actually works. Ruthless, calculating, terrifyingly precise. To illustrate, he tells of Cesare Borgia, son of Pope Alexander VI, an intelligent and brutal figure whom he regarded as the ideal model. In 1502, after conquering Cesena, Borgia gave absolute power to Ramiro Dorco to establish order. Dorco carried out savage orders, beheadings in front of families, property seizes, castration of opponents. The city lived in terror, but order was restored. When Borgia returned, the people hated Dorco and him. He understood. Fear must not turn into hatred. That night, Borgia acted. He had soldiers cut Dorco's body in half, placed the two halves and head on a pike in the square. The next morning, the people awoke to the horrific scene, but instead of fear, they felt relief. Borgia appeared, calmly declaring that Dorco had betrayed him, exceeded orders, and that he himself had freed the people from the monster. It was a perfect betrayal, bloody yet artistically political. Machiavelli did not condemn, but praised Borgia as the model leader. Goodness is valuable, but only when it does not weaken power. Perpetual kindness is a luxury. Power not reinforced by strategic cruelty will collapse under rebellion. A leader cannot always be merciful, loyal, humane, or honest. The nature of power demands cruelty, betrayal, deception when required. From this he posed the famous question, should a leader be loved or feared? The coldest answer in political history. Ideally both, but if one must choose, it is safer to be feared. People are fickle and weak, full of contradictions. Today they praise, Tomorrow they turn for petty gain. Love is fragile, dependent on emotion. Fear is durable thanks to the clear threat of punishment, maintaining order even without inner consent. But he warned of a thin line. Make them fear you, but never hate you, because hatred breeds rebellion, and rebellion kills power. If violence is used, make it quick, secret, then let fear spread rather than hatred. That is the art of the prince. Be loved when possible, feared when necessary, never hated. But Machiavelli went further. He bluntly rejected the absolute value of honesty. Admirable, but ineffective. A wise leader must know when to lie, deceive, betray when circumstances demand. The world changes. Yesterday's promise can become today's chain. Morality is not a compass, but a disguise weapon. One need not actually be noble, only make others believe you are. The clever ruler masters appearances. Act the saint to persuade. People judge by the image you create, not the truth. The ruler must be a master of image. Speak like a saint, act like a wolf. Words carry the scent of morality, the language the masses understand and expect, but ultimately, they judge by results. If good, cruel, or deceitful acts will be forgotten, even praised as wise. Politics is not a stage of virtue, but a game of effectiveness. The winner is not the best man, but the one who knows when to be good and when to be ruthless. From this, he drew a portrait both terrifying and fascinating. The powerful man is not always cruel, but ready to be cruel when needed. Not always deceitful, but ready to lie when truth becomes a burden. His system is not cynical, but starkly realistic. See life as it is, not as we wish. He believed humans are inherently selfish, greedy, untrustworthy. A leader cannot be idealistic or naive. If the world is full of snakes, learn to slither. Reducing Machiavelli to a symbol of cunning and betrayal is unjust. Beneath the cold, sharp lines lies a chillingly accurate truth. He did not advocate evil. He merely held up a mirror, forcing humanity to confront its true nature. He distrusted Christianity because blind faith in God made people weak and dependent. In The Prince, he mocked, "Many believe the world is ruled by God and fortune, and no matter how intelligent, humans cannot change or protect themselves." That was not just religious mockery, but a declaration of autonomy. Abandon reliance on fate. Seize destiny yourself. For Machiavelli, that was the supreme virtue. Mastering oneself amid chaos and deception. Those defiant words mocked the belief that God controls fate, and we are powerless pawns. But beneath the sarcasm lay a powerful, liberating idea. Humans have absolute self-determination. No God, no fate. You shape your path. And once recognized, Machiavelli seemed to say, now do something with that freedom. As usual, he did not philosophize with emotion, but with cold reality. He saw life as a battlefield, where man confronts virtue and fortuna. Virtue is not moral virtue, but the capacity to act, the inner strength that turns ideas into reality, the courage to challenge circumstances, conquer adversity, the fire of the creator. A man of virtue does not wait for opportunity. He creates it to become great. Fortuna, fortune, fate, chaotic force, rules half of life, but the other half lies in our hands and our virtue. He compared Fortuna to a raging river, calm at times, devastating at others. The weak complain to heaven and blame destiny. The man of virtue builds dikes, prepares, directs the flow to his will. His clear conclusion, fortune has power only where you allow it to have power, a declaration of initiative and self-reliance. With virtue, courage, preparation, intelligence, man does not merely cope with adversity, but turns it into a stepping stone. In a chaotic world, Machiavelli did not teach reliance on fate, be taught mastery of it. Harsh reality. Today's action may raise you to the top. Tomorrow, Fortuna may reverse and drag you down. Hence his warning, always be ready to adapt. Adapt or perish. He believed that beneath the surface ceremonies of morality lurks an inner beast, instincts of desire, sometimes cruelty, close to Freud's unconscious or Jung's shadow. He did not say unleash it freely, nor freeze it with hypocrisy. He taught mastery and cooperation with it. Be kind when possible, but when the goal demands, become both lion to drive away enemies and fox to avoid traps. Rules guide only so far. Real chaos requires virtue, courage, creativity, adaptability. Most important, do not live by the ought-to-be world of books. Live by the real world, full of deceit, traps, risks, or write your own death sentence. See reality without excuses. Act with intelligent decisiveness. That is the deepest core of Machiavelli. Though his thought is powerful and profoundly rare, its real-world application is full of paradox. The Prince was not written as a philosophical masterpiece, but as a desperate political gift, begging favor from Lorenzo de' Medici, the man who ordered his arrest and torture. After months of humiliation and isolation, he wrote to prove, "I understand power better than anyone." But ironically, he was never pardoned or employed. Lorenzo perhaps never read it, or if he did, dared not entrust power to someone who thought and wrote so coldly. Machiavelli fell into the trap of his own philosophy. If power is everything, if deceit, betrayal, cruelty are the path to it, who would trust him? Who would bring the political fox into the inner circle? By exposing the raw truth, he excluded himself from the game. The work, instead of opening a career path, slammed the door shut. The principle of secrecy, scheming, cold calculation, is strength. Writing it down and spreading it works against the possessor. No one wants someone willing to betray, deceive, kill for effectiveness by their side. Thus Machiavelli, the man who exposed the political world, was rejected by that very world. He became the solitary figure of truth, teaching others to rule, while ruling no one himself. For the rest of his life, he drafted no constitutions, led no revolutions, governed no city. He lived as a poor scholar on the outskirts of Florence, writing books, channeling his political passion like an artist quietly painting portraits of power he would never touch. The greatest irony, he became immortal not by holding power, but by understanding it better than anyone who ever did. After the prince failed, Machiavelli withdrew from politics, slipping into a life of indulgence, love affairs, breakups, immersion in carnal pleasures, and worldly delights. He wrote bold, satirical comedies about sex and paradoxes, gaining fame faster than any of his political works. Yet deep down, he still yearned to return to the arena where he belonged. A fleeting opportunity appeared when Medici relatives invited him to advise on the French-Spanish War. He oversaw Florence's defense, hoping to revive his honor. But fate mocked him. The Spanish army bypassed Florence and sacked Rome instead, causing the Medici to fall once more. Machiavelli lost his patron, became unemployed, impoverished, forgotten. Soon after, he fell ill and died within a month, closing the life of a man who never held power, but understood it better than anyone. His political career was minor, but his intellectual legacy is immortal. The Prince was not published during his lifetime, but when it appeared, it shook Europe. An English cardinal called it a book written by the finger of Satan. A Pope Paul IV banned it. Though condemned as wicked, his ideas quietly spread among rulers, especially in France, where Catholic-Protestant religious civil war erupted. King Charles IX was a figurehead. Real power lay with Catherine de' Medici, daughter of Lorenzo de' Medici, to whom Machiavelli had dedicated the prince. In the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre of 1572, thousands of Protestants were killed. Catherine was seen as the architect. A survivor, Innocent Jamchier, wrote a book accusing her of being a fanatical reader, a single mission from the sound of Catherine, distinct from the background of the army. For the first time, this mass confinement was produced. From then on, Machiavelli became firmly tied to the image of ruthless, cunning, Italian-style intrigue, a cultural symbol of political darkness. both cursed and admired. The eternal paradox. The man history called a devil of power left behind the truest mirror of human nature. Later books distorted his philosophy, turning him into an advocate of violence, immorality, and worship of cruelty, a deformed but widely spread version. Gentile's work, translated into Latin and English, became more popular than the original The Prince, planting the seed of Machiavellian as the Western cultural term for treachery, scheming, coldness. From Shakespeare's stage to the Elizabethan court, it became an adjective implying deceit. In truth, Machiavelli simply said something simple yet audacious. Christian morality and effective leadership do not always go hand in hand. Looking at the world today, most of us must admit he was right. His reputation may never fully recover, but his thought has seeped into the bloodstream of modern politics, not only in amoral dictatorships, but also in pragmatic leaders who understand that politics requires cold decisions in an imperfect world. He accurately described today's power mechanisms. Politicians maintain a moral facade while quietly calculating survival. Morality and ambition run parallel, but rarely intersect. Arguing right or wrong is not the most interesting part. More valuable is the way he viewed the world and humanity. Pessimistic, brutally realistic, yet profoundly intelligent. Strip away the hypocritical morality, and we see he wrote not only about politics, but about human nature and the art of survival. I admit that deep down I still resist the skepticism he represents. I do not want to become a Cesare Borgia, nor live under the rule of someone like him. At the bottom of my heart, I believe humans can be good, that amid calculation and darkness, there is still the light of humanity. But it is precisely Machiavelli, with his ruthless frankness, who forces us to face the uncomfortable question, is that goodness enough to survive in this world? If I insist that humans are benevolent, and the world still has room for kindness, he would probably laugh scornfully. You have just fallen into the trap I warned about centuries ago. The illusion of living according to how you want the world to be, rather than how it actually is. In that moment, we realize the ruthless consistency in his philosophy. He cared nothing for being good, had no regard for God, no concern for friendship or loyalty. He cared only for power, the purest, rawest essence of human action. In that terrifyingly steadfast coldness lies something admirable, absolute honesty with reality. He did not embellish humanity, did not hide the instinct to dominate. He simply said, look straight at the world as it is, learn to exist in it. Thus he is both villain and the truest mirror of humanity. He is dangerous not because he advocated power, but because he forced us to confront the dark instincts we try to deny. Believing him blindly means losing our humanity. Ignoring him means blinding ourselves to reality, like every great historical villain. But faith might soon be faced again, and the windows of history are accepted by our true nature. He departed without a throne, without armies, without an empire, leaving only cold, honest, razor-sharp pages that have kept the world debaying for half a millennium. But that is his greatest victory. While countless rulers have been swallowed by time, his thought lives on, challenging and illuminating those in power today and anyone who considers themselves moral. He offered no hope. He gave a mirror of truth, forcing us to look at our deepest instincts, where good and evil intermingle in the complex dance called survival. The world he saw was not paradise, but a battlefield, with only two kinds of people, the awakened and the devoured. He did not teach cruelty, but enough clarity to know when goodness becomes a burden. He did not teach betrayal, but understanding when trust must be protected by strength. Perhaps that is why, though called a man of the devil, Machiavelli is still quietly read, studied, and applied by the most powerful. If he were alive today, he would probably just smile. The world hasn't changed, only the naive think it was ever better. Because in the end, he did not write about evil, He wrote about real human beings with light, shadow, desire, and fear. In that unflinching understanding, Machiavelli left an immortal lesson. Look at the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. Only then do we truly begin to live, understand, and master our own destiny.